So renting versus buying. Um, I've been following this debate for years now. You always kind of run across it. If you're in this realm of real estate and investing and things like that, like finance, you always kind of run across this topic. Should you buy or should you rent? Um, they're kind of the same, really. So look, if you have a house, um, that you're thinking about renting versus a house that you're thinking about buying. So buying versus renting. Um, you're kind of you're kind of looking at the same amount of money coming out, regardless. Um, so the money that you spend for both is about the same. It's about the same, bro. I mean, you know, you're buying when you're buying here, you're paying your mortgage. Sorry, dang, I'm drawing a blank here. So when you're buying, you're paying your mortgage, plus insurance, plus taxes, plus unexpected expenses. So this is what you're paying when you buy. Now, when you rent, you're just paying rent, and you may be paying um, some utilities or whatever. It depends on how your lease is set up. But you're paying rent here, and ideally, you're covering all of these things in the rent that you're paying. So we're kind of, if you're on the rent side or the buy side, we're kind of all, you know, it's really the same thing. We're all paying for the same things. No matter what side you're on, you're contributing when you're renting. When you're renting a house, you're contributing to these things. So it's just that this person who owns the property, who is buying, they're benefiting from appreciation and equity. So they benefit. You don't benefit from nothing when you rent. Maybe a peace of mind, that you don't have to worry about directly paying for these things, like the unexpected expenses. Anything that goes wrong, you contact the property management company or the owner of the property. um, so you don't really have to worry about this coming out your pocket directly for these things. um, you're still contributing to all of this when you rent, but you don't really have to worry about doing this, depending on how your lease set up. But um, in most cases, you don't have to really worry about doing this when you're renting. And that's kind of the main thing that people kind of moan about, with buying. It's like, they say, oh yeah, when you buy, you're responsible for, the house, anything that goes wrong, it comes out of your pocket. And that's true. So when you're buying, you are responsible for taking care of the house. Um, so the only difference is just ownership. That's the only difference between renting and buying. You're gonna, like I said before, you're gonna end up paying kind of the same, because you do pay. So with buying, usually you pay a lower price. So this is a lower price per month. With the if you're buying, the mortgage and insurance and tax and your taxes and all that, it's usually lower than what you would pay if you were renting. Um, because right now, I'm paying. I did buy my house in 2016 though, but still, if I was buying, I mean, bro, it's all the same. That's the point. You are paying in some cases when you're buying, you're paying a lower monthly payment for the house, but you still have to pay for these unexpected expenses. So they make up the bit that you. So the unexpected expenses make up the rest of what you would pay when comparing to a person renting. So a renter just pays their rent, but all of this stuff is kind of included in the rent. So you kind of basically you're spending the same. When you're renting and buying, and in particular, I'm just comparing two houses. So you're spending the same amount of money, bro. Last night I was reading this article about a guy. He and his wife, so guy and wife, they make 92 grand a year. They bought a house for which they pay, I think, 1,700 a month. And let's see, that's pretty affordable. I think they paid 260 grand for the house. So the house cost them 260 grand. So it cost them 260 grand. Their monthly payment, I think they said that, yeah, I think their monthly payment was 260. And see, this is pretty affordable for them. Like 92,000 times three, 276,000. So, this is a good kind of rule of thumb. If you multiply what a person is making by three, I think three is like the ceiling. When you multiply by three, that is how much a person can afford for a house. So they can. This is like an affordability calculation here. Three, when you multiply your income by three, that's like standard affordability. You can afford a house, whatever number, whatever number you get after you multiply your income times three, you can comfortably afford this much of house. So you can comfortably afford this. Now, when you multiply, I think when you multiply your income by four, that's when it starts getting into the realm of unaffordable. So it's like you're not making enough income to cover what this would be. So 90, let's multiply this guy's income by four. So 368,000. So with these calculations, under this rule, this affordability, quick calculation here, under this rule here, this person would not be able to afford this, because let's see, let's put this to the test here. So let's see, with 276,000, if this person, let's just say that, okay, let's say that they put down 20%. Well, actually, let's say that they put down 3% or something like that. So that's 8,200. And we're going to subtract 276,000 minus 8,200, and we get 267,000. Now, what is the monthly payment on 267,000? That would be roughly, let's see, 006. That'd be roughly $1,600. So at 6% interest, a 30-year mortgage, would be $1,600. And that's not including taxes and insurance. So let's just add, like $200 or something like that, $300. So let's just add that. So that'll be 1,800. And now this $1,800 is what this guy, I mean, this in the article it says 1,700, I believe, but let's say it's this. Let's say it's the 1,800. So now you take that 1,800 and I first of all, you want to see what he's making per month. So we're going to take 92,000 and divide it by 12. He's making $7,600 roughly per month. So that's what this is per month divided by 12. So ideally, you want your housing, you want your house to take up no more than 30% of your income. So let's divide 1,800 over 7,600 and see what we get. What percentage do we get? We're trying to see what 1,800 is whatever percent of 7,600. So it's 23%. Now that's affordable. See, he's under that 30% ceiling there. See, that's really affordable because of this calculation here. That's what I'm saying. This calculation here, when you multiply your income by 3, that lets you know that you can comfortably afford whatever that answer is. So this guy can comfortably afford a house for this much money. Now, when you get to this range, let's do this one. So 368 times 0.006, and that's like a quick calculation of what a mortgage payment would be. And so this would be 2,208. Let's just say 2,200. Okay, and then we add like $200 or $300 for taxes and insurance. It doesn't have to be exact. So 2,400. It's not that bad. So let's do 2,400 divided by 76 and see what percent 2,400 is of 7,600. It's 31%. 31%. So this is 31%. So what can I write this at? Let's just do something like this. So this is 31%. Not bad. Not bad. I guess when you get to the 5s, when you start multiplying this by 5, that's when it kind of gets really unaffordable. So 92,000 times 5 is 460. And we're going to multiply that. And I didn't do the down payment for this here. Let me do this over. It's going to be lower than this, actually, once you do the down payment, But anyway, it's a good rule of thumb to use, when you're multiplying your income times 3 and 4. 3 and 4 looks like, they look like they're affordable. When you get into the 5 and 6 range right there, that lets you know that the income that you're making is not enough to handle however much the house you're looking at costs. You can really use this calculation right here, this little quick calculation of affordability when you're looking at markets and you're looking at median incomes in an area, when you're looking at what people are, the median amount of money people are making in the area. When you look at that and then you compare it to the median home selling price, you can quickly look at those two numbers and, you can divide the income into the median home selling price and you can figure out, that's right? Let's divide this by 92. Yeah, so you can divide the median home selling price. You can divide the median income into the median home selling price. and you'll get either, a 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever uh, as the answer to that calculation. And that will let you know whether or not, that's a quick way to figure out whether or not a certain area is affordable, or not. So there's areas in my city where it's not affordable at all to stay in most of the areas in my city. It's not affordable. I think in my city the median, in my city the median income is like 68,000, and that's for a single person. Or is that for a couple? Dang, I can't really remember. I think that's for a single person. So I think that's for a single person. So that's the median income there. But in certain areas here, houses cost about 350 to 400 grand in my area. So this is what brand new houses are selling for, in between this range, 350 to 400,000. So a single person making this much money cannot afford these houses. They would have to be married, so they would have to be married in order to afford, and both of them would have to be making 68,000, which was, it'd be close to like 140. And then maybe they can afford a house that costs 400,000. Let's see. It's a 2.8. So yeah, then they'll be able to afford it. But, that's a quick calculation. But this guy was saying that, back to the story here, this guy was saying that, he has this affordable house. So him and his wife make 92,000 a year. They have this affordable house. Oh wait, this is his. So 1,800 over 76. So, okay, 20. This house is really affordable for them. So they have this house that's affordable, but he's in the article, he was saying that it's costing him so much in expenses that they can't really afford the house. But you know why? Because the house was built in like the 1950s or something. See, bro, when you buy a house that's this old, there's a lot of things. There's a plethora of things that's going to go wrong with it, during your ownership. There's a plethora of things going to look. These houses here, the way they were built, the way houses were built in the 1950s, they cannot stand in comparison to the way houses are built today. And then, of course, time wears houses down. So a house built in 1950, I mean, bro, it's falling apart inside. You just can't really see it. They say, oh, it got good bones. It's good bones. There's things that you can, that's the way the house was built back in those days. It cannot, it just cannot stand the test of time. The house can, but the way that they built the houses, they cannot stand, the standards of today are way ahead of the way houses were built in 1950. So of course this guy and his wife are going broke, spending money on the expenses of this house because it's too old, bro. 1950. See, when you buy an old house, of course your expenses are going to go up. So, this guy. So when I read this article, he was talking about, I have an affordable payment, 1,800, 1,700, something like that. They paying something around there, but that's affordable. Look, it's 23% of their income. So, it's really affordable. You have to stay under 30% as a good rule of thumb. But nowadays people are, excuse me, spending so much money. They're spending almost 50% of their income on their housing. So housing, in general is really unaffordable. brand new housing. So you have to really search for a house, and I mean, bro, for like potential homeowners, they're having a hard time because they don't look for deals like we look for deals. We're investors in real estate, so we know where, we know the books, we know where the gems are. What we know where they lie. We have to find them, but we know where they're at. Doing these types of techniques that we use. Wholesaling, bird dogging, and the way we search for properties, direct mail, and all that. We're searching for affordable properties, but regular homeowners, they're not. They're out there looking on Zillow and talking to real estate agents, and they're paying so much money to live in a house. It's not affordable for them. But this guy was just, he was kind of complaining, during the whole article, and saying that, housing, he was kind of like knocking buying. He was kind of he was kind of saying, don't buy. He said he would have been better off if he would have rented and just invested in the stock market, like in buying an index fund or something like that. Yeah, he could have, he could have made out good. But like, bro, listen, bro, I'll take my situation and explain it to you as best way I can. So I bought my house for 140K in 2016. And I didn't even plan to buy my house. I just had been renting all my life. And I was like, you know what? I don't care about buying or renting this house. I just want a lower payment than I'm spending at my apartment. So me and my wife, we weren't married. We wasn't married at the time. And we were living. I moved into my wife's apartment back then in 2015. So I moved into her apartment in 2015, and so we were in these apartments here. Okay, and wife's apartments, and we were paying like $900 a month. We were paying probably about, man, I think we was paying like close to $1,000 a month. I think we was paying like, yeah, I think we was paying like $900 a month, but it probably was more than that. I need to go in there really quick and ask her what were we paying. I'll just say we were paying $1,000 a month to live in this one bedroom, one bath apartment, bro. And I think the apartment was like 600 square feet or something. Like, I mean, it was just crazy. And we were paying this much to live in this place. And it was nice, it was nice. Had a little gym in there, you know what I'm saying? It was a nice little place, but we were suffering in here, bro. 600 square feet. Like, when we were walking, to the bedroom from the living room, from the living room area, walking from there so this is the way the apartment was set up. So you come in here, and then this all was the living room, and then this was like a little hallway that goes to the bedroom in the back. And here was the kitchen. So this is the living room area. And the kitchen was like right here. So this is where the kitchen was. So this is the bedroom. And this was the kitchen. And I mean, bro, we would, when she was going to work in the morning and I was going back there, and I think the bathroom was right here as well. And when she was going to work in the morning, I was leaving the living room. We would almost rub shoulders in the hallway. It was that small. I mean, this place was small, bro. I could not live here anymore. We stayed there for probably about a year. I moved in with her, and I was renting a house before I moved in with her. And the house that I was renting was like an older house. I think it was like built in 1970 something. And it was okay. I had a roommate, and I didn't want to stay with the guys anymore. I wanted to really settle down with my wife. So I moved in with her to help us save money, because we was saving a lot of money, because I was making $3,000 a month, and she was making probably about $4,000 a month. So we was making like $7,000 per month living in this apartment. And I think at the time I had like, and then at this time I had like $15,000 saved, and she had like seven or eight something $1,000 saved. So, we was okay in this house. We was okay in this apartment. We could afford it, pretty comfortably. We could afford it. We was making $7,000 a month, and then we had this much money saved up. So we could afford this apartment. But bro, we just could not stand being in such a small space together. My wife was there by herself before me, so she was comfortable. She was comfortable. But when I moved in, and we sleeping in this small bedroom together, using the same little small bathroom, and we in the living room. We right next to each other. I mean, good thing we want to be with each other, because we were right next to each other. I mean, 600 square feet or something like that, 700 square feet. It's nothing. So we were living here, paying this. And so like I said, we was living here for like a year in this apartment. I started looking on Zillow. I was telling her, I was like, look, we need to get us a house. We need to get us a house. We need to get, we need to move out of this apartment, because, we were talking about getting married and having kids and all that. And I was like, bro, there's no way we could stay in this apartment doing all that. So we started looking for a house. So we were looking, I wasn't looking to buy a house. We were just looking to either rent or buy. We didn't really care, and we weren't really looking at our future like that. We didn't care about ownership or anything. We was just looking for something to get out of this place. We just wanted to get out of here. And I saw this house here. I saw this house online for 140. I saw it on Zillow. Saw it for 140, and I contacted the realtor, and they came and showed it to us. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. 1,500 square feet, with the garage, 2-car garage, and they wanted 140K. And so I went to the bank, and since I'm a veteran, I got a VA loan so I got a VA loan for damn near the whole purchase. I at the time I wasn't even really into real estate like that, so I don't know what I put down. I know what I spent to get into the house. I don't know exactly what I had to put down, like what percentage. But I got a VA loan at like 3.5% interest for a 30-year mortgage. And so I put down. So we looked at this and we was like, man, we need to get this, because I was looking at the payments, and I think my payments were going to be 700 and oh no, you know what? Actually, yeah. They were going to be like $760 something per month. My payments. Now this house was built in year built in 2008. So this house was built in 2008. So the payments were going to be $760 per month. We're spending $1,000 right now. At the time we weren't really paying attention to, you know, how much we're saving on expenses, renting and all that. We weren't even paying attention to that crap. We just was looking at what we're spending now compared to being in a bigger place and spending this much. And so it was like, anything else that come up, expenses and all that, we're fine with it. We lucked out because we bought a house that was kind of a newer model house. It wasn't like a 19. We had that much sense back then. We had that much sense to understand that we were not going to fix up a house or anything like that. Neither of us have any experience or any desires to go in a house and try to do it yourself. We didn't have any of those aspirations at all. We knew where we weren't skilled at. We knew that we weren't looking for no house to move into and fix it up ourselves. We knew we weren't going to do that. So we had enough sense to know that we didn't want to buy a house that was built in like the 1960s or 1970s. But some people you got to do what you got to do. So there's no knock against that. But in our situation, we knew that we weren't going to take out the hammer and fix up some things, because we saw some older year built houses on the market at the time, and we was looking at them and they were affordable, but we was like, bro, ain't no way that we gonna get in there, and because I don't know anything about fixing up a house, nothing. So we knew we were looking for a newer model house. So this was a 2008 built house, and when we went and seen it, when we went in here and looked in here, it looked just like it does now. You know what I'm saying? It looked just like it does now. There was nothing that needed to be done, really. It was basically a brand new house. It was built 8 years prior to us buying it. So it was an okay house. It didn't need anything. So we were paying this. So once we moved in, we were paying this $760 per month. And you know what? That included taxes and insurance as well, I believe. Yeah, I think it did. I think it included taxes and insurance. Man, it's crazy. When I first moved into this house, I didn't know nothing about, how to pay those things, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it was all set up, but it was kind of a smack in the face for me, once the taxes and insurance started going up, because that's another thing that you don't really understand when you first get into buying a house, is that taxes, insurance, these things go up over time. So these things started going up over time, and this started going up. And there was a discrepancy in my, there was an error in my payments for my taxes and insurance. I had this issue with my insurance where my bank never updated my information on me getting new roofs, because so when we moved in 2016, I think 2 years later in like 2018, I got a new roof, and it was paid for by the insurance company. So the insurance department at this bank. So they paid for me a new roof, but they never updated it. They never said, okay, now Kelvin has a new roof on this house in 2018. They still was basing my roof's age on when it was built in 2008. So when I got this new roof in 2018, they never updated their information. So I was paying more in insurance than I needed to. But we got the discrepancy handled a couple of years ago, and then I got back pay from all of these years, from 2018 to like 20. I think I solved that issue in 2025, actually, 2024, 2025, and they back paid me for, they gave me my money back for all the money that I spent extra during those years for a roof that was in their system as an old 2008 roof, when really it was. I got several new roofs, during my time of living in this house. So I got like 4 new roofs since I've been living here. We've been having crazy hailstorms. So since I've lived in this house, I've gotten my roof replaced 4 times. The shingles. I've got the shingles replaced 4 times. But anyway, so this was going up way too high. I think when it got to that point in 2024, I think my mortgage was going up to $1,100 per month. And that, when I saw that $1,100, I was like, man, when we first moved in here, it was at 760. Now it's at 1,100. That is what prompted me when I saw this was my upcoming mortgage payment for this year. I called them and I was like, hold on, man, what is going on? Why is this stuff going up so much? And if you were paying attention to the news and all that, you would think it's just global warming and all that, the thing that happened in 2020, the pandemic and all that, prices going up. So insurance does go up. Your homeowner's insurance does go up with the value of your house. That goes up, but it doesn't go up as much as this was going up. This was going up like crazy. My payment went from 760 to 1,100. I was like, bro, what's going on? So, but anyway, so this is what we were paying when we moved in. So this was great, compared to what we were paying here. But to get into this house, I needed to put down, I didn't need to put down. I came out of pocket $4,000. So I took this money from my savings, and this is what I needed to move in. So this is what I needed to move in. Now, I don't know what percentage this was. I don't know what the percentage of this 4,000 was contributed to the down payment of the house. I don't know how much the down payment was taken out of this. If I paid a down payment at all, I really wasn't paying attention during that time. So I don't know what was going on. All I knew is that I needed $4,000 to move into this house. And so it was probably down, it could have been on the, I don't know what it was. And I don't even want to try to guess it. It probably was a down payment, but I needed $4,000. So I took that out of my savings and put $4,000 cash to get into this house. So this is how much money I put into, moving into this house. This is what I needed to go into this house and call it my home. I needed $4,000. So I put that $4,000 down, and now it's 2026, March 2026. So this $4,000, when I bought the house, I had I don't know how much equity I had in the house, but the house was worth probably about this. The house was worth about 140. So I bought it at at its market value at the time. So it was worth about 140. If I had, the bank, they have to have, well, I think I was paying some kind of insurance. The banks make you pay like this. They make you pay this fee for not having enough equity. Like, you need to have, the banks like it when you have at least like 20 or 25% equity. Your equity needs to be 20 to 25% of the value of the house. Banks like to lend money to, homeowners who have at least 20 to 25% equity in the house. Now, if you don't have that when you buy, they make you pay this, I can't remember what it is, but you have to pay something extra because, they're taking a risk. You don't have any equity, hardly have any equity. You have under 20 to 25% equity in the house. So you have to, pay this fee. And so I think I was paying that. And because I barely had any equity in it, I bought it for what it was worth at the time. But now it's 2026, and I have probably about $200,000 in equity in this house. So if I were to sell my house today, I would walk away with about this much, because I don't pay taxes because this is my first home. So if I were to sell it, I wouldn't pay taxes on this. With married couples, we don't have to pay taxes on up to $500,000. If you sell your house and you have up to this much in equity, I believe, you don't have to pay taxes. You don't have to pay capital gains taxes. So I have this much money in my house. So my $4,000 turned into this. you know. I lived here. I've lived here, so I've been spending money on the house and all of that. So it's much more than this. It's much more than this. But this is what I have. My 4,000 and whatever I've been spending, taking care of this house over time. Let's just say it's 15,000. Let's say I'm all in. Let's say I'm 15,000 all in. Expenses, living here, and all that. Let's say I'm 15,000 in. Look, bro, $200,000. This is what I can walk away from this house with, if I wanted to. 200 grand, no taxes. Now, this is the value of ownership, bro. This is the value of ownership. Now, if I would have been renting, first of all, let me tell you this. In my neighborhood, see, my neighborhood looks like this. So this is my neighborhood. This is my cul-de-sac here. And this is the main road here. So this is my house here. This is my neighbor's house who's renting his house. So my neighbor moved out and he's renting his house. And I have one neighbor here. I have the guy right here that stays there. And I have my good friend here who stays here. And then his neighbor. And then we have the elderly lady here that stays there. So this guy is renting. We all own. So we're all owners. Okay? Own. So my neighbor here and me, we both knew the owner here before he moved out and started renting his house. We both knew this guy. So we have his phone number. He told us before he moved out, he was like, if you have any problems, so he was like, look, I'm renting my house out. He came, knocked on my door, and he knocked on my neighbor's door here. And he said, man, look, I'm getting ready to move out. Here's my phone number. I'm renting my house. And if you have any issues with any tenants that I have staying there in the near future, anytime, call me. Call me anytime. I really want you guys to watch the house for me to make sure that the renters are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if you have any issues with the renters, give me a call and I'll handle it. So he told me this and he told my neighbor here. My neighbor here calls him all the time when there's an issue with people renting here. Luckily, we haven't had any real issues with the renters here. But my neighbor here, he's an older guy. I think he's like 70, and he hates the fact that our neighbor here is renting this house. He hates that because with a house that's being rented and it's surrounded by owners who, when you have a house that's being rented surrounded by people who own their homes, we hate it because renters don't always stay here. Usually they're transitioning to a owning a home and they just here for a little while. So the people who are renting this house right now, they're just there for a year and then they're moving out. The people before them, it was a young girl and a young guy. They were just living in the area, testing out the area. And then they moved on. They moved to, another state. So this guy keeps renting this house. And my neighbor here, he hates it because he's like, man, we need some, we hate it because you never know who you're going to get. You're either going to get really good neighbors, okay neighbors, or bad neighbors. So you really don't know what you're going to get. And see, homeowners, we hate that. But I tell you what, though, the people that rent this house, they have no power in this cul-de-sac. We have all the power. So me and my neighbor here, we can call, like if this tenant, if this tenant does something that we don't like at this house, we will call the landlord and complain to the landlord. And then the landlord will call the tenant and complain to the tenant and tell the tenant, like, look, you can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do that. And you can't do that because the neighbors, the neighbors are complaining. You cannot do that, you know? So the renters here, they really have no power here in a neighborhood surrounded by homeowners. They don't have any power. So, you don't really have no power. See, bro, no one can tell me what to do in this neighborhood. No one. And no one can tell this woman here. No one can tell this couple. No one can tell my neighbor here. None of these people. We cannot tell each other nothing. The only thing we can do is smile and wave. That's it. You can, some neighbors, they kind of complain to each other or whatever. And some neighbors get into spats or whatever, people who own homes in neighborhoods. But in all actuality, bro, you can't really tell us what to do. No one cannot call us and be like, hey, you know, you guys are being a little bit too loud out there. You need to calm down. I mean, the police can come by and everything. And the only thing the police can be like is, look, we're getting complaints. Can you try to keep it down? But see, with the renter, the police can come over there and they're going to call the owner. And then the owner has a lot of power over the tenants, the renters. They can raise the rent. They can raise the rent. They can, they can be slow with getting things maintenance. If man, bro, I've heard landlords, I know all kinds and types of landlords. And one of these landlords I know, he was having some problems with his tenants. They weren't doing something, I think they were kind of late on one of their payments, 1 month. And I think they were like a couple days late, and they needed something done. They needed like their AC tended to. They were having problems with their AC, but it was still working, but they were having problems with it. It was a problem that was going to evolve into something bigger if it wasn't seen to right away. But because they were late on their rent, this landlord I know was slow to get their AC fixed. He waited a long time, like weeks, until he called the AC maintenance guy to come by and look at the AC unit. And it's kind of like a psychological, type of thing. It's like the renter doesn't really want to say anything because they don't want to really upset the landlord. Renters that care about living there and care about their situation. Renters who don't care, they don't care. They'll just walk out. But the landlord was kind of letting these tenants know, like, look, you better pay online. I mean, on time, not online. You better pay. Yeah, you might want to do that as well. Because this landlord, he still collects cash, which is old school as hell. I don't know why he does this, but he was like, look, you better pay on time or else I'll be slow with getting these things done that you need done. So it kind of like puts the tenants in like this weak, like I'm the servant, to this landlord, this person has all the power, so we cannot make this person upset. And it's kind of like, it puts you in like a really small, weak position. And it's kind of crazy. But I do not want to be a renter surrounded by homeowners. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be in this type of situation. They kind of looking at me crazy, because even the person that's living here now, she's a really, really nice person. But, when she came here, she tried to knock on people's doors and introduce herself, but only a few people answered their door and say, hey, how you doing? And she, started baking cookies and taking cookies to people's houses and stuff. And no one returned the favor, not even me. But I'm really good friends with her, and I did some things for her, while she was here, that made me a good neighbor. So I did some things for her, but no one returned the favor. But we all, all the homeowners here, we all talk to each other and friendly with each other. And, we're friendly. We're more friendly with each other than the person that's renting here, no matter how long they've been staying here. Because the renters that were staying here prior to this person that's staying here now, they was here for about 4 years. And we seen them and talked to them, but we really didn't talk to them. We spoke to them. But see, when you're a renter, bro, I don't know what it is, but it just puts you in a weak position. You kind of like, um, you you dependent on too many people. You depend on the landlord, the property management company, all their rules and all that. You're not in a good position. You're not in a good position. But see, home ownership, you getting the equity. You kind of got power as a homeowner. And I don't know why it's like this. I don't know what it is. We got more power. When I walk around this cul-de-sac or walk around in this neighborhood, like I have this feeling of like I belong here and this place is mine. Rather than a person who's renting here, they're probably feeling like, this place is nice, but I'm probably ready to move on. But these days, what people are doing, especially Generation Z, they are renting and then investing in index funds. So that's how they're gaining their wealth. That's how they're gaining wealth. So they're renting and investing. Now that's a good strategy. That's a good strategy. You know what I'm saying? Like the index funds will bring you, probably after inflation is added, they'll give you probably 7%, you know what I'm saying? 7% every year on your money. That's cool. That's nice. So if I was to put if I was doing this and I would have put my $4,000 into this, I don't know what this would be. Let's ask chat really quick. $4,000 in the index, just say in a index fund. Let's say S&P 500 index fund. I mean, same thing for the most part. Fund invested from 2016 to 2026. How much would I have at 7% appreciation, I guess? Compounded or whatever. Let's see. ChatGPT always gives you these big numbers. Let's see. Okay. Final value after 10 years would be $7,800. Okay. Whatever. So this is what chat is giving me, what I would have now if I would have invested $4,000 in, and I guess, could keep contributing to this. Let's just say, let's say 4,000 every year. Well, 4,000 at first, whatever. Let's say 4,000 contributed every year. What would that be? Oh, so every year we put in $4,000. What will we have? Oh, we have 55,000. Oh, no. Okay, yeah, 55,000. So $4,000 added every year. I would have 55K. So every year from 2016. From 2016 to now, to today. This is how much I would have. I mean, that's cool. That's cool. During that same time, like I said, it cost me $4,000 to get into my house. And if you add in expenses over the years, I've probably I'm probably at 15K or 20K. And now I have $200,000 in equity. And right now, actually, I'm sitting on a $150,000 HELOC that I have to invest into properties. So I have this right here in my disposal right here, 150K. And this is how much I would be able to walk away from this house with. I mean, if you compare this, I mean, you're living in the house, you're living here, so you're spending on this house. I mean, you know, you're paying down you're gaining more equity and appreciation, and also, as you pay down your mortgage, you're gaining more equity there as well. Um, some people may look at this and be like, oh yeah, this option is great because you're not, so you're renting and you're not spending money on unexpected expenses and all that. I mean, that's true, but it just depends. Like, the older the home, the more your expenses will be. The newer the home, the less your expenses will be. So out of pocket, unexpected expenses, um, newer models, you're going to spend less. You're going to spend less. Older homes, you're going to spend more. So, if you have to really, like, if I was buying a house today, it couldn't be no older than 2000. It couldn't be no older than that. It couldn't be no older than 2000. The house could not have been built um, beyond prior to 2000, the year 2000. I wouldn't buy a house that was built prior to 2000 to move in. I probably wouldn't buy a house that was built prior to 2005. They look old and ugly as well. But I probably wouldn't buy a house that was built before 2005, bro. Because I know that they're going to require more money. So you have to buy right. You have to really plan this out, to be successful. So me, if you ask me, I'm on the ownership side. I like the idea of one day owning my home and having, my house is worth about $300,000. If I can pay out, like, I owe about $100,000 right now on my house. This is how much I owe. And if I mess around and get this much money, and this, like, if I had, what I mean is, if I mess around and get this much money and be like, okay, I'm going to use all this to pay off my house. Like, I can't spend every dime I have, But if I get an extra 100,000 and be like, okay, this is going to pay. I'm using this to pay off my house. Then I have $300,000 in the house, and then I can go get this HELOC for 300,000. It's going to be 80% of the 300,000. So and then I can take this HELOC and start flipping with it, like I'm planning on doing with my HELOC that I have now. But I'll have more money here. So I'm on the ownership side, bro. I like, I don't know if I'm delusional or whatever. And then you have to add inflation into this as well. So 3% in 10 years. So that's 30%, and see 30% of this, of what so 30% of this would be, what's 10%? That's 20,000, 40, 60,000. Four, 10, what is this? 140. Yeah, so 140K really. That's what I have in the house, 140K. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So 140K. So I got 140K. But still, bro, like, you have 55K here. And see, this is forced. This is forced savings. You have to be a diligent person to keep investing in the stock market. You have to be really diligent you have to be a disciplined person to keep putting this much money per year into the stock market, into this index fund, in order for you to get to this point in the next 10 years. This is forced. This $140,000 I have, like, after inflation is added, this is forced, bro. I have to make my payment if I want to live here. But see, while I'm living here, I'm being forced to save money. I'm being forced to create wealth. You know what I'm saying? So this is forced. This is happening without me having a choice about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I don't pay my mortgage payment, I'll lose my home. I'll lose, my place to stay here. So this is forced. I like that about home ownership as well. This is forced. So you don't have to think, you don't have to think like, oh man, I didn't make enough money this year. Maybe I can just put $2,000 in my index fund this year. See, bro, now you're going to go under this. Now you're going under the 55K. But see, this is you don't have that choice. You know what I'm saying? You don't really have that choice. This is forced savings. So, I'm on the ownership side because I'm an owner. But you can also make an argument for renting. You can make an argument for renting. It just depends on your goals. Everybody's goals are different. Everyone has different goals. You may look at houses as just transitional type of things. You just move into one to get into an area, work there, and then you move to another one, and then you move to another, and you're just renting your houses. If you live in that type of lifestyle, yeah, you wanna rent. You don't really want to, be buying. You could buy everywhere and just rent it out, but houses make lousy rentals when you're buying them at market value and you're not buying them really cheap. So, when they say that whole renting and ownership thing, like I would rather be an owner, but you have to be able to afford to be an owner. You have to be able to afford a house. You have to do that calculation where you take your income. So you take your income. So you have to take your income and you have to multiply it by. So the affordable range would be 3 to 5, I guess. Once you get over 5, it starts becoming unaffordable. So you have to take your income and multiply it by these numbers to see if you can afford to live into a house. And remember, a house needs to be under your mortgage payment needs to be under 30% of your income. It needs to be under 30% of your income. And see, that's kind of what you get here with these quick calculations. When you multiply your income by 3, you're kind of, figuring this out, really quickly. But, anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I'll talk to you another time.